Okay, Kaushal, do you see the recording?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, so this is our last week of lectures. We are looking at structures. We'll be talking about structures and pointers, and in particular self-referential structures in today's class. And that will allow us to implement some very nice data structures like linked lists. So we'll quickly do a recap of structures that we have seen in last class. And if there are any questions or queries that were left unanswered, we'll try to answer them. Okay. So as we have said, structures allow us to have new or user-defined data types. We have data types which are basic data types. Okay. So just 1 second. So are you able to hear me, Kaushal and others? I mean, there's one student who says that not able to hear.
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Okay, can other students? Okay, so I think Rahul, it is a problem at your end. Other people are saying that they are able to hear me. Okay, so I'll repeat. Structures allow us to define user-defined. You have user-defined data types, and we can have a collection of things together, which allows us to define a coherent structure or an aggregate data type, which will have the following syntax. That is, you have this struct keyword. You have the name of the structure, which is called the structure tag, and the different members that you want to have inside the structure. It clearly depends on what is it for which you are defining the structure. We have seen examples in yesterday's class where we have defined a structure for maintaining student information, where the information that we wanted to maintain was the roll number, name, age, and program. And you can have other fields that you want to store and accordingly have the appropriate data types. So we have said that when these set of statements are written, it means that you have defined a new data type, but you have not allocated memory for this because you have not defined a variable of that data type. And that can be done by this statement, which is struct student s, which tells that s is a variable of type struct student. So this is a new type or new data type that you have defined. And a common thing that we may miss out is this semicolon after defining the structure, which is some small syntax error. So you don't have to worry too much. The compiler will bring it out for you. Okay. So we have also seen how to initialize structures, how to access elements of a structure. So if you have this structure struct student and a variable s of the type struct student, then you can access the members of this structure by saying s dot roll number, s dot name. S dot roll number is a character array of size 9. S dot name is a character array of size 20. S dot age is an integer. S dot program is a integer again, and so on. And just the same rules apply as we had for character arrays and so on. For example, you cannot do s dot roll number is equal to me20 b001 and so on, but you will have to say string copy. So this is how we have done it in last class. So any questions or comments with something which is not clear in this? Okay, so what we have seen as well is that assigning one structure to another is supported. For example, if you have two students, two variables, both of which are of type struct student, and you have initialized one by saying that, initialized one by having appropriate values inside that, then you can say S2 is equal to S1. And then in S2, everything what is there in S1 will get copied. So when you access S2 dot age, it will in fact be 18 if you do it after this statement. That is, after this statement, you can have S2 dot age will also be equal to 18. S2 dot program will also be equal to 1 because you have set S1 dot program equal to 1. However, the language does not support checking of two structures which are the equality of two structures. If you want to do that, you must implement your own is equal or some function which will allow you to take two structures and check whether they are equal or not. And we have also seen that structures are passed by value. So whenever you pass a structure to a function, a copy of that is made, and any changes made locally in that function will not be reflected in the caller. So these are the things that we have done yesterday, and also spent time on that. If there are any questions or comments here, please let me know. Okay, good. So what we will do is we will look at the same example that we had yesterday, which is this define. I mean, we have these rectangles which are axis parallel, and we said that these rectangles can be conveniently represented using these 2 points. We agreed to choose the lower left and the upper right. It is you can equivalently represent it using the other 2 endpoints, and there are multiple ways of representing it. For this, we defined a point, a structure called point, and the point itself has its x coordinate and y coordinate because we are defining all of this in the 2D space. And the structure will have 2 points as its members, as we have seen. That is, we defined a struct point. This is the definition of this new data type, which we are calling as struct point. And then the rectangle that we are defining itself will have 2 points. The points are indicatively named as lower left and upper right. So when you define a rectangle, you can define a variable of type rectangle in the main program or somewhere. Then you say struct rectangle R1. Then you can say R1 dot lower left dot x coordinate, which will allow you to get the x coordinate of the lower left point of the rectangle, and so on. So one thing that we were looking at towards the end of the class yesterday was this function, which is get point. So this function is get point, which we tried to write, which says that inside, I mean, this function will be called inside main, and eventually we'll want to call it for some rectangles, lower left or upper right. But let's say we simply call it for some point. Then if we have a variable called variable named P1, which is for the point, that is struct point P1, then and send this P1 from main, we have seen that this won't work because this simply doesn't work because we have structures which are passed by value, and therefore you cannot simply hope to get the variable P1 which is in main populated by this function which is get point. So another approach that one of you suggested, which is a correct approach, is the following. That is, let us write a function which is called as get point. It does not take any argument. It simply says that it just get me a point. So get me a point meaning it should fill the coordinates, x coordinate and the y coordinate. It should prompt the user, get the values, and then return a point. So this thing, that is struct point, returning this struct point is allowed. So this is something which is a valid thing to do syntactically, and this approach does work. So we will show an example of this. However, it copies a lot of data. So let's first see how can we write this program like this. So I repeat, this version of get point where you are passing a point from main to get point does not work. However, when you are saying that the function get point returns a point, that is returns a variable of type or has a return type which is struct point, then it works. So let's view this program. So this is the complete program. We have the structure definitions appropriately, and please note that the get point does not take any argument. In fact, it defines a local variable, and just for the sake of clarity, I have called this variable local P1. That is, it is a local variable which is called P1. I mean local point which is named as local P1. And whenever I am going to take the x coordinate and y coordinate, they are in fact going to be for this local P1. So this and of local P1 dot x coordinate, this means that I'm going to go to this local P1 x coordinate, whatever is this space given to it, and take the address of that. So you can read this as and of bracket local P1 dot x coordinate. Similarly, local P1 dot y coordinate. So these two I'm scanning from the user, and finally I'm returning local P1. So I'm returning this local P1 to the place of, or to the caller, whoever is calling it. And remember that we can assign structures to each other. That is, in a previous slide we have said this, that S1 equal to S2, assigning one structure to another is supported. So we can use this to say that this struct point P1, which is a point which is defined inside main, is equal to get point. And remember, get point does not have any argument. Its return type is struct point, and this will do the following, that it will copy whatever is in this local P1, because we are returning local P1 into this P1. So this assignment is valid. P1 is equal to get point without any arguments. Finally, when you try to print P1 dot x coord and P1 dot y coord, it will appropriately print out whatever the user has entered here and which were stored in this local P1. So I strongly encourage you to take this program, type it out on the Python tutor, because I don't want to do it now because it unnecessarily takes up some of the class time. But all of you should do this, run this program and see the execution of this program to, I mean, it is illustrative that it does indeed copy whatever it is into the the variable which has been defined in main. So please stare at this program, look at it, and let me know if there are any questions or comments.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Can we give member functions for these structures?
I am not able to hear you, Girish.
Ma'am, can we give member functions for these structures instead of giving these functions outside separately?
No, so this is not like C++. You cannot have member functions inside the structure.
Ma'am, can you repeat again? Your voice broke in between.
So are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we cannot have member functions inside the structure, unlike C++ class, right? That is what you are saying. No, we cannot have these member functions are not inside the structure. Yeah. Any other question?
No, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, so yeah, this is, I mean, you can think of C++ as, of course it is, I mean, it is something which is building on C, and it will allow you to do this object-oriented, I mean, you will be able to code in the object-oriented style. We can do that in C by slightly different things, but structures cannot have member functions. They can have members, which are data types of different, I mean, either user defined or basic data types. Yeah, so we cannot control what data is accessible by a variable. Yeah, so as I said, this access control, I mean, it is by default, all of this is public. If you are comparing it with the C++ style, yes, all of it is public. If once you define a variable of type point, anybody can access x coord and y coord. I mean, p1 dot x coord and p1 dot y coord. Yes. Okay, so yeah, so so one of the questions regarding this is the scope for local P1 ends within the function. So will there be an issue when returning local P1? So this is a good question and this is relevant to this slide. So I'll just spend some time. So let us say that I would have, let's forget this get point, right? So let's say there was some compute square or something like that. So you are given an integer and you are computing the square of it. And just for the sake of it, you say int y is equal to x into x and then say return y, right? So what is the scope of y for such a function, such a function that you have defined, which has the following prototype: int get square and then some integer x, right? So therefore you are saying that in that function get square, you are saying int y and y is equal to x cross x times x. So what is the scope of y for this function? I mean, what is the scope of y? So the scope of y is again restricted to that function in which you have defined it, but you can say return y, right? So return y simply is going to take whatever is in y and copy it to the place where the caller has, I mean, whoever has called it, right? In a similar way, this, I mean, this local P1 scope is clearly local to this function. So this is a correct thing. However, when we are saying return this local P1, the contents of local P1 will get copied into whoever was calling it. And remember, this type matching was done by the compiler. So you could not have taken some int P1 and said that P1 is equal to get point. You should have had struct point P1 and then say P1 is equal to get point. So I hope it answers the question about the scope of this local P1. And the reason that it has been named as local P1 is especially because the scope is local to that function, but still we can return that. Yeah. Okay. So any other question regarding this? Okay, good. So one problem with this that I said is it is copying a lot of things. For example, it had a, so when you see this, I mean, you should look at this executing in the in the Python tutor. In fact, you should take some big structure like the student data, student structure, struct student, and get all of it, right? Then you see that all the memory has been allocated in main. When you come to this return, if you say return local student, then all the memory, all the values will get copied into the memory which has been assigned to the student here in main. And that is what I mean by saying that there is a lot of copying happening. So if we want to avoid copy, can we write the function which returns a pointer? We know how to deal with pointers now. Why don't we return pointers? So note the change between the two functions. So of course, I have omitted this structure definition so that it becomes a little succinct. So this function get point was returning a struct point. Now we let it return struct point star, that is a pointer to the struct, I mean a pointer to this struct point, and appropriately change the code so that it is now taking now doing the appropriate syntax matching, right? So so what we are going to do is, since this is the return type of this is struct point star, we should also take it in something which is of the same type. So instead of saying struct point P1, we are going to say struct point star P1. So this matches the correct syntax. I mean, it matches the type for this. So it is syntactically correct. And instead of saying now return local P1, because that is not allowed. This is the return type of it is not struct point. It is in fact struct point star. So we will return the address of this local P1. So is this a correct program? Will this solve our problem of copy? Okay, so the question that one of you has asked is memory allocated for P1? The memory for the pointer to a struct point is allocated, but nobody has allocated memory for the to store the x coordinate or the y coordinate. That is correct. So we have not allocated the memory, but anyway, we are not saying that we are going to allocate memory. We are just passing the address. We are collecting the address of this local P1. So that is okay, but yeah, so I'll answer your question, Rishabh. Okay, let's see whether this program is correct and then I'll answer your question. Okay, so as some of you have pointed out that this program is not correct, everything is syntactically correct, but we see that this local P1 is a local variable for this. It goes out of scope as soon as this program, this function ends its execution. And therefore, when you send the address of this local variable, it is something that you are sending which is out of the scope, which is an illegal memory access after this function has completed execution. So therefore, although the program is syntactically correct, it is most likely going to give us a core dump. The same reasoning that we had done earlier for that get sum and mean, right? That program that we had written last week. The same kind of errors I'm trying to illustrate and re-emphasize, say using this another example, just that it uses structures and pointers to structures. So this program is syntactically correct, but semantically it has issues because it will give a core dump because we are accessing something which has gone out of scope. So I hope everybody sees this point. This is the same kind of example that we had seen in the last week. Okay, so one of the questions that one of you has asked is, what is, okay, so in the previous program, I said that there is this is a correct program. There is no problem in this. But however, when you do this, there is a copy that is happening. So every time that you are taking everything into this local P1 and then copying it into the point P1 here, right? So this is okay if you are taking 1 point, that is okay. Very likely you will get 100 points that you are going to take in, and every time you are taking a local point and then copying it. So maybe you will have a structure of you will have an array of 100 points, and you are going to take this, and for I is equal to 1 to or for I is equal to 0 to I less than 100, you are going to do this in a loop, that is get point, something, that array of I is equal to get point, and every time it is copying. So this is something that we would like to avoid. It will take time, right, to copy some large data structure into another place. Every time you are doing this repeatedly. So that is something which will incur work. And think of large records of students or something that you are taking in, and every time copying it out, which will take some time. So it is an overhead which we would like to avoid. There is nothing wrong as such. Yes, it is a local variable which is taken, it is deleted, but each time you are making this copy. Does that answer your question, Rishabh? Okay. Yes, so yeah, I think Gitartha, you have mentioned this earlier also, that the second program you may get, even if you access this, you may not get a seg fault, you may get the correct values, but that is incorrect to do. So these variables are out of scope. So if the compiler gives a segmentation fault at some other execution, it is completely fine because you are accessing something which is out of scope. So that program has behavior which is unpredictable. So we cannot rely on such programs. Okay. So the correct way to do this, if you don't want the copy to happen, as well as you want to have that, you are not returning a local variable, is what we are aware of, that is taking memory on a heap by using this memory allocation function, which is malloc. So note that this get point is a function which is not taking anything. but it is going to return a pointer to a struct point, which is given by this prototype. And in this in this function, we are not only going to have this, we are not going to define a local variable struct point, which we had done earlier, which was called as local p1. Instead, we are going to have a pointer to this, which is pointer to a struct point, which we are calling as PTR, star PTR. So PTR is a pointer of type struct point, and we are going to allocate memory for the point using this malloc function. So please read this line carefully. So how much memory do we need? We need memory which is equal to the size of struct point, not struct point star, because we need memory to store all the members of that. So that is exactly the size of struct point. Think of it that how much memory do you require to store a pointer? Maybe 8 bytes or some fixed number of bytes. But for a record that you want to store, or a student record, or a point that you need to store, you need memory which is defined by the members. How much space do the members occupy? So that is, therefore you need memory which is size of struct point. So you are going to need these many bytes. You are telling malloc allocate me these many bytes, and whatever is that pointer that you are giving to me, which will be of void star, let me typecast it into struct point star, because that is how I am going to interpret this memory. And this contains two members, one which is x coordinate and the second which is y coordinate. So now you have this memory which is similar to having this local variable, that the kind of memory that you have is the same in terms of size and the way it will be interpreted, but it is not local to that function. It is available on the heap that we have seen in the execution earlier. So it is available to you on the heap. Now you need to initialize the x coordinate and the y coordinate. So that can be done in multiple ways. We can access this star PTR. Once you do, you know that it will be of the type which is this struct point, and then you can go to its x coord, which is what we want. But of course, scanf requires the address of it, so we want and of all of this. These braces are not required, but since we are reading it for the first time, I wanted to put the braces. So star PTR will tell you that now you have something of struct point. Now you can take the x coordinate of that, and you need the address of it. Therefore, you have preceded it with the ampersand. This can be simplified by saying that star PTR dot x coord. You could have written it without the braces, without the brackets, but I have written it just so that you see what is happening. You could have simplified it by saying that PTR arrow x coord, which is the same as saying that I'm going to take this PTR, and then this, since it's a pointer, I'm going to use this arrow notation to access the members of it. So PTR pointer x coord, and then its address, which is and of that. So these two are equivalent statements. I have written them so that you can stare at them and see that they are equivalent. Similarly, you could have done this for PTR pointer y coord and taken the address of it. So once you have done this, you have scanned the two values, x coord and y coord. Note that these two values are stored in that heap memory location, which is available. And now, there's no local variable, that the address of a local variable. In fact, you are returning the address of the memory in the heap, which we know is available as long as we don't free it or the program terminates. So therefore, we are not freeing it at the moment. So therefore, we can return this pointer. And then when we take that pointer into main, that is, we are assigning it to P1, then P1 pointer x coord and P1 pointer y coord will allow us to nicely print out the x and the y coordinates of the point that we have taken. So any questions here or any comments? This is, again, very similar in spirit to what we had done for the mean and average program, but just that it is now dealing with structures. Okay, am I audible, Kaushal? Can you confirm? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, because everybody is so silent that I thought that maybe I lost the connection. Okay, so I'm not sure, but I hope people are staring at the program, and if there are any questions, I'll just wait for a while and then we can move. Okay, so I'm glad that there are no questions here. Then we all of us understand structures. All of us understand that structures are passed by value. We can return a structure which is structure from a function and assign it to another structure in the caller. That is a valid thing to do. However, it involves copy. So we have another way of doing this by returning the pointer to a structure rather than returning the structure itself. But however, this memory should be taken in a global space, or in a space, sorry, which is not global space, in a space which is available even after that function has ceased to execute or completed its execution. Therefore, we are taking that memory in using this malloc. And of course, I remind you that if you want to use malloc, you should use the standard, you should include the standard library, which we have done. So again, it would be very nice for you to copy these programs into the Python tutor and run them and see the execution of these programs. Okay, so having said this, we will just recap what kind of things that can be members of a structure. So yeah, so these are basic data types. So we have seen examples where we have had integers, characters. We have not had examples where we required floating points, but we can have floats. What else can be a member of a structure?
Other structures?
Yes, another structure. We have seen that as an example where we had inside a rectangle, we have had a point which was defined as a structure. What else? Arrays. Good. So we have had arrays which were names as well as, we did not have integer arrays, but we had character arrays in both the cases. Yes, we can have other structures, and we can have pointers to basic data types. Like, for example, we can have int star, char star, or float star, all these things. We can have pointers to other structures. For example, instead of our rectangle having a rectangle having points, the 2 points, it could have pointers to 2 points, that is the lower left and the upper right. But we must remember that if we have only pointers, we do not have memory to store the x coord and y coord. So we will have to allocate memory if we have pointers. So if you define them using pointers, then you have to be careful so that the one which is initializing it is able to is actually getting memory for it. So otherwise it will be invalid access again. So very interestingly, what structures can contain is a pointer to the same structure. For example, if you have struct point, then it can contain a pointer to so you can have a pointer to struct point star, let's call it my PTR, and then you can have a member which is a pointer to the same structure that you are defining. So this is in some way recursively saying that you are having a pointer to yourself. That is the kind of thing, but this is allowed. However, what is not allowed is that a structure cannot contain a structure of its own type as a member. For example, a point cannot contain a point as its member, and that is agreeable in the sense that you have not even defined the point completely or saying that point contains a point as itself. So that is not something is allowed, but a pointer to a point is allowed. And this allows us to define some very nice data structures, which we are going to do in a while. So is this, I mean, these two lines are important. These are some things that I think all of us understand by now, the first few lines. This line, which is in blue, that it can contain a pointer to the same structure, is something that we are going to exploit. And we will remember that it cannot contain as a member a structure of its own type. So that is something that is not allowed. In fact, it's a syntax error itself. So this is something that we are going to exploit in the remaining part of the class. Okay, so I think this is a good time for me to take a logical break because in the remaining part of the class, we are going to start our discussion about linked list. So I'll take a small 2-3 minute break and then we'll come back to the class. I'm going to pause the recording. Sorry. Again. Okay. Okay, good. So what we have seen is that what is allowed to be a part as a member of a structure and what is not allowed. Now let us see, let us move to a slightly different thing rather than talking about the syntax and the language. Let's talk about an application which is about this dynamically shrinking and growing data set that you want to maintain. So let's assume that we have been talking about maintaining student information. Let us say for my class, I would have wanted to maintain student information. I certainly maintain it in a file. But when I want to process this information and bring it to memory, what kind of data structure that I can store all this information? How would I store all of this information from a file which contains all your details into memory, which I can store it? So one of the ways, let's say that initial estimate of my class maybe would have been 100. So remember that when we were doing all of this, exemption, no exemption business, we had no idea how large a class I'm going to teach. So maybe initially I would have thought that I'll have a class size of 100 or 120, and I would have declared an array of size 120. Each array element would be of type struct student, but struct student itself may change from whatever I had defined earlier. Maybe I need some more or other parameters which I will define struct student appropriately. So what are the advantages or disadvantages of allocating this array of size 100? So let's say that I have defined this array of size 100. What are the advantages or disadvantages of defining this kind of a data structure to store this the information of these 100 students? Any thoughts? We cannot add more students. Very good. So yeah, so what if the class size turns 120, and in fact, what if it turns 184 like it did for my class? So we can always reallocate the memory, and we can reallocate a different array and copy the data into another array of size 120 or 184, whatever the need be. However, this has a lot of copying. Any other disadvantage or anything that you see? So clearly the class size cannot increase, or if it increases, I must copy this, right? So the second thing is that, okay, so if I want to avoid a lot of this copying, then maintain array of pointers. That is good. At least I will not be copying the individual student records repeatedly when I change this memory from 100 to 120 and then again possibly 180. But maybe I'll still be copying these pointers whenever I change this data. So this is a disadvantage of this array. So yes, so array of structures is what I have used, but if the size of the class itself changes or increases, I must copy it into another array which has appropriate size. So in which case I must copy it. Okay, sorry. So Kaushal, has the slides, are the slides visible now?
Yeah, yes, no. Yes, ma'am. Now they're visible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they went off for a minute, right? Okay. Yeah. Now, so what happens if lot of students drop this course? So in this case, it doesn't happen. Yours is a core course, but you can imagine that lot of students you will be taking up electives, and we see that in the initial time, the class has a lot of strength. A lot of popular courses like machine learning, data science related courses have a lot of strength. But once the instructor tells what is the what are the assignments, what is the grading pattern, lot of students leave or drop the course, just like lot of you are leaving the class. But nevertheless, so lot of students drop the course, in which case we have to delete those entries by setting those pointers to null. Or if you have just array of structures, then you have to maintain that some of the array entries are invalid because these students have dropped the course. So this is something which is an example, and this is one example, but there are lots of examples in real life where you have a dynamically growing and shrinking data set. And for that, a very convenient data structure is what is called as a linked list. So we are going to see first what is a linked list, what kind of operations do we want the linked list to support, and then implement this linked list using our newly learned this thing, which is structures and pointers. So this is our goal in the remaining part of the class. So first I'm going to talk about what is a linked list, and we will discuss what operations should a linked list support. Based on that, we will write some functions, and then we will also design the data structure that will allow us to have a linked list implemented in C. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this is move to this board version, which I am going to use. So Kaushal, can you please tell me that you can see the Jamboard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Okay, so let me okay, so let's talk about first what is a linked list. So a linked list is okay, so a linked list is exactly what it says, that is, it has links. So it has two parts. The first part, which we will, I mean, this square is representing one node or element of a linked list. This part we will call as the data part of the linked list. And then there is also a pointer which will hold the link to the next element, which typically is called the pointer or the next element. So this is the link. So what is a linked list? A linked list is a set of nodes which are linked together using some pointers. Each node has a data element. This data can depend on what you want to store. If you want student records, this is going to contain data about students. If you want to store points, it is going to contain the x coordinate and the y coordinate. If you want to store rectangles, it is going to contain the 2 points, which in turn are 4 integers and so on. And then there is this next element which is independent of what you are storing, but it is pointing to a box or a node which is of the same type as the first node. And this itself has two parts. Again, one which is the data, and the other which is a link which is pointing to the next node. And this is a pictorial representation of a linked list. So this part is the data part, and this, the other, which is the unshaded part, is the link part of it. and this is the linked list. And how does the linked list end? We say that there is a node which does not have any next element, and therefore this node has this link which is null. Therefore, this is the last node, and this is how the linked list ends. Where does the linked list start? It starts with the first node. So there is typically a head into the linked list, which is again a pointer to the first node of the linked list. So this is typically called as the head of the linked list. And this linked list can represent several things. This data can represent whatever you want. So this is a pictorial representation of what is called as a singly linked list. And this singly will become a little more clear when if we look at doubly linked lists also. Okay, so before I go any further, what kind of operations should such a linked list data structure support? So please write your answers in chat and we will take it up so that everybody gets a chance to think about it. Okay, so most of you have said that it should support adding and deleting nodes. So I would not say adding and deleting nodes. I would say adding and deleting data, because we don't know how it is going to store this data. So when you want to store student records, you should not worry about whether it is stored as a singly linked list, doubly linked list, or an array or whatever. You want to store data for 100 students, maybe we will be able to, maybe there will be addition of some 50 more data items. There may be deletion of 10 data items and so on. And data in the sense some student records. So yeah, so so some of you have said addition and deletion of nodes. I will just modify that and say that addition and deletion of data. That is, you have 10 points currently stored. Maybe you have the 11th point. You would want to store that or add that to the singly linked list. And you may want to delete some existing point. Okay, one of the things that one of you has said that we should basically be able to support whatever we could do in arrays. So what is it that you could do in arrays? Yeah, this is good, but what is it that you could do in arrays and you would want to support? Okay, appending, editing data. Okay, good. Appending, editing data. I mean, editing is this thing. Okay, searching and sorting. Good. So that is a very important, that you may want to search something that is some element already present, and you may want to sort the linked list based on some element. Let's say you may want to sort the students based on their marks, or you may want to sort the students based on their departments, or you may want to sort the students based on their TA, and so on. So you may want to sort this thing. You may want to search elements in the singly linked list, right? Good. So let me just write the following operations that we would like to support. So the first one is add data. Second is delete data. The third is search data. So all of it is search data item. Okay. Anything else? You have already said edit data. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Sort. Okay. So these are the things that you would like to support. Okay. So one more thing that is more for, for our testing purposes is something which is very helpful, which is print the data. Print all the elements which are present in your data structure. So I don't even say singly linked list, but print data, right? Print all data items which are present. Yeah, so modifying existing data itself is called edit data. So that is a different word for that. So these are the things that we would like to support. So Very good. So now we want to first understand what is data for us. That depends very much on the application. But once we fix this data, we want to do all of this. That is, add new data to it, delete data, search data, edit data, sort it based on something. So if you have two parameters, X and Y coordinate, you may want to sort it on X, you may want to sort it on Y, and so on. Okay, so let's take the most simplest data item, which is an integer, and build a singly linked list of integers. The reason we do this, which looks very toyish and which looks like a very small kind of a thing, we start with a big application where a lot of student records are there, but then come back to integers, is because when you handle pointers, pointer handling itself is a new thing for you, and therefore when you deal with pointers, we are bound to make some mistakes while dealing with pointers. So instead of having this complicated item as data, which can be a big structure having this thing, we can have a singly linked list of simply integers and talk about this singly linked list. So now let's talk about a singly linked list of integers, and of course you can modify it to have a singly linked list of the most complicated record or data that you want to store. So, okay, so sorry, this page. Yeah. Okay, so what we will have is the following, and I will now have a singly linked list of integers. So this again, it will be having two parts. The first part will contain an integer item or integer data. And for the moment, let's have unique integers stored in it. There is no requirement that they should be unique. They should be unique. And we'll always represent the end of the singly linked list by this symbol, which is the null kind of a thing. That is, this node or this element, this cell does not have anything which is the next cell. So therefore, this is the last node of the singly linked list, and this is the head. And let's say this item is 10, this item is 5, this item is 30, and this item is 2. And these are the elements that we have stored in a singly linked list. So did it go away? Just give me a moment. Yeah, great. So so this is the singly linked list that we want to define. Now what I would like us to do is, how do we think of implementing this singly linked list? What kind of a structure do we want to define, and how will we define that structure and finally define this singly linked list? So what we want to do is, what is this node that we are calling this as a node? What kind of a structure can we define so that we can define such a singly linked list? So are there any questions about a singly linked list itself? Okay, so I'm assuming that at least the motivation for the singly linked list, etc., is clear. So let's now ask, how would you define the structure so that it can contain a data item and it can contain the appropriate pointers so that we can define a singly linked list? So any suggestions that you have, please write down in the chat and we can look at what your suggestions are. So sorry, I think, okay. Okay, I have two answers which are fine. I mean, not both of them are correct, but that's okay. Some, at least there is some attempt. Okay, so one of the answers or the type of the answer is at least this, a structure containing an integer that is clear, right? Because everybody thinks that we should have an integer, so that is clear. And now we would like to have a pointer, but a pointer to what is something that is not possibly clear to everybody. So let us do this. This is the first time we are doing this kind of a structure definition. So let's define the struct, which is struct, and it is typical to call it a node, but I'll just call it a list node, struct list node. And of course it has an element which is int, let's call it data. So the data is a simple integer. The second element is something which is slightly unconventional or new that you are looking at it. So this is a pointer that we are clear, and let's call that member as the next. So that is again typical. So if we have called this as a list node, then we would like the next thing, that is this cell, to be pointing to a list node itself, right? So what we are going to do is struct list node star next. So remember that next is the name of the member. I mean, this next is a pointer to struct list node, and struct list node is itself what we are defining. So what we said in the slide, that is a structure can contain a pointer to itself, is something that we are using. So this is the definition of our node, our structure. So it is struct this is the keyword. List node is the tag or the structure name. There is an integer data which we want to store, and there is also a pointer that we want to store. The pointer, we are calling it as next, which is customary in the language of linked list. Therefore, we are calling it as next. And the type of it is struct list node star. So if I define the following, that is struct a variable of this type, that is struct list node, let's say L1. L1 is a variable. Then I can access L1.data, which is this element, let's say 10 here, which is this element, and L1.next, which will allow me to access this part of the structure. So which is a pointer, as unless you initialize it, nobody is going to make this linked list for you. So what is our goal? Our goal is to create these cells. How do we create these cells? These cells or these nodes are going to be created using either allocating memory by saying that struct list node L1, which will give us this cell. But if you do that in any function, this is going to go away. Therefore, you are most likely going to use malloc to allocate space for this. And then you are also, it is your responsibility to set these pointers appropriately, so that you are going to set this linked list in the following way. That is, this node points to the second node, this second node points to the third node points to the fourth node, and fourth node does not point anywhere. So this is something that is our responsibility to set these pointers. And finally, we have a pointer to the first node, which we will call as the head pointer. That will allow us to have this linked list completely. So this is our goal. That is, if we are given 4 data items, namely 10, 5, 30, and 2, we want to create this linked list in this manner. So this is the definition of the node that we are going to have, and we are going to use this to talk about the linked list and in fact implement the linked list. So are there any questions or comments here?
So for the head pointer, we have to create a pointer to this structure type, ma'am.
Yes. So the head pointer, or the one which is going to always point to the head, is going to be a pointer of the, or it is going to be of the type struct list node star.
Okay.
Because it is a pointer to this type, right? So yeah. Okay. So yeah, so the one of the questions is, can you explain what does L1 dot next do? Okay, so it is not doing anything. So let's just, okay, so whenever I define a structure, I'm defining some aggregate box, right? That I'm saying that, okay, this part is integer, this part is a character array, this part is something, right? In a similar way, I have said that I have a box which has only two elements. One is an integer, the second is a pointer. Till here, nobody will not have any confusion. This pointer is a pointer to, it could have been to anything. If it would have been an integer pointer, it will point to something. Whatever memory cell is going to be pointed to by it, you will interpret as an integer. But what I am saying now is that this next is a pointer which is of the same type which you are defining. So this box, I'm calling that this type that I'm defining is struct list node, right? This is a new user defined data type that I am defining. It has two cells, one which is an integer cell in the sense a place where I can store an integer, which is the data that I am interested in. The second is a link or a pointer which will point to a cell or a box of this same type, which is of this type, which will again have two parts, one which is the data, the second which is the next pointer, and I will build a linked list. That is why it is called a linked list, because I'll chain or link things together and build this linked list till the time I want to build it. And this is the last element, therefore I say that after this there is nothing. So this link is having a special this thing which we are saying that it is null. So the next allows me to access the next element in my linked list. Just like if you are at a of I, then a of I plus 1 allows you to go to that next location in the array. Similarly, this is saying that this next is going to allow me to go to the next location in the linked list, right? But these are not contiguously stored. So you cannot do some kind of a arithmetic and say that, okay, go 4 cells away or 4 bytes away and you will get the next thing. That may not be the case, because maybe at a later point you will say that this cell has to be deleted from this thing, in which case I want to change this link to point here. So in which case my linked list now has 10, 32, and that's all. Or maybe something else will come up and I will want to say that this is no longer null, but I have another record which is 12, and then it is null, right? So this can happen. So this is the usage of this next. Is that clear? Yeah. Any other question? Okay, good. So let us now go to, I mean, in the few minutes, I don't know whether I really have. So how much time do I have? Or are we almost done with the time? Kaushal, can you tell me?
Yeah, ma'am. We are done actually.
Okay, okay, fine. So I won't stretch the class. I'll just stop here. When we come in on Thursday, we will implement the linked list, and we will implement it we'll implement some of the functions of the linked list. Yeah.
Ma'am, wasn't today the last class?
No. So why do you say that?
No, ma'am, because you said like Monday, Tuesday we have the last class, so we will have the photo session and all.
No, no. Okay, I'll just stop the recording. Yeah.